Hello and welcome to LNC Radio 113.8. That was Mac the Knife. Someone called up during the break. They said this isn't Mac the Knife, it's not Bowie Darren. I said Bowie Darren's a cunt. So here's some Louis Armstrong for you. Actually, that song goes back seemingly infinitely. There's an infinite regression there somehow. I've looked into the origin of it before. I think the actual song comes from a German orchestra or something, a play where they have the character Mackie Messer, and he has a knife, and something happens, and they do a song about that. But then that harkens back to Captain Macheath, who's part of an opera of some kind, and he's an analogy for this Jack Shepherd character, or potentially a Jonathan Wild. And I don't really know who any of these people are, but I keep going back, and there's more and more and more history to it. So the actual song goes back to the German thing, and then the story of this Mac Heath, Mac the Knife, goes back even further. But what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? It's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful song. And I think Louis Armstrong's version is better, to be honest. In a similar vein to La Vie en Rose, another Louis Armstrong. Obviously, Edith Piaf did the first version, and her version is amazing. I like that version. Sometimes I will just listen to that version. But there's some heart that Satchel Mouth really puts in there, I would say. You know. Um, Talking of heart, you want a bigger heart? You want higher testosterone? Ooh, she legit. Saw some fitness influencers talking about different testosterone enhancing herbs and supplements, natural stuff, obviously, not this TRT or Anavar, but they found that ashwagandha and Tonka Ali and Fedoja and she legit, they not loads of research. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, personally, I've taken Shilajit. I used to take Shilajit regularly. I've even given it to friends. One of my friends said it gave him an erection for a day. He was hard for an entire day. So, I don't know what you meant to make of that. For me, it definitely worked out. I mean, I could feel it. Ashwagandha, I'm not so sure about. Tonkat, even less sure, to be honest. Um, But that's fine. That's fine. I mean, these fitness influencers, it's so hard to know who's right because, and it's a problem I have generally with a lot of fields of study is that you hear a theory and you hear an alternative theory, and regardless of which one is right, unless they make a literal logical fallacy somewhere that I can detect, I don't know empirically who's correct because I'm not going to read studies, and I don't know how to read studies that well. I can read a more literary study where it's just telling me what correlations are and potential causations and stuff like that, but anything with n equals 1 or logarithms, I don't fucking know. Anything like that, it's too much for me. It's way too much. So, and this is the problem, say, with something like Flat Earth. The thing I've always said about flat earthers is they actually understand more about the earth and about maths and geography and physics than your average person who believes the earth is round. Now that sounds weird because, I mean, I believe the earth is round, so it sounds weird to someone who shares that belief. But what I mean is most of us go around and we've heard that the earth is a globe, and we just kind of accept that because we've heard it since we were a kid. We've had globes since we were a kid. It just makes sense. And I think it does make sense. But I've never really looked into the geometries and physics and mathematics of differently shaped Earths and what that would mean. So I have a little bit of respect for the flat earthers in a way because they know more about the subject than I do. Doesn't mean they're right. Doesn't mean I'm wrong. And it probably is the case that the scientists and the geometry people and all this stuff, they probably have a better understanding than the flat earthers. I'll put that out there. No offense if you're a flat earther. I'll put it out that they probably have a better understanding. But to those same flat earthers who might have just got offended by me saying that, I'll be the first to admit, you know more than me. You 100% know more than me because you've looked into it. And you've probably learned how to analyze some of this stuff. So, and it's the same with fitness influencers, which is why I bring it up because, some people, they're saying, do the lengthened partials. I like doing the lengthened partials, but only on certain exercises. Some it just doesn't work. And some people are not saying that. There's contradictory advice everywhere, where two fitness influencers will be saying the exact opposite thing, and both of them have more credentials than me. Both of them look way more jacked than me. Both of them have been going to the gym way more than me. Both of them have done more research than me, and maybe they both even have PhDs and different accreditations, and they've trained this client and this client, and they're professionals, or they were in Hollywood or whatever. To the layman, it's impossible really to tell. I mean, I judge the merit of the info I get based on how trustworthy the person seems. But that's not great either. That's flawed. I mean, there's people who seem trustworthy and can say complete lies with a straight face and make them sound like the truest thing you've ever heard. You know. So yeah, I mean, it is hard to tell, but I think this is one of the reasons why, in some ways, I am more of an empiricist. I know that I can't read all the scientific studies, but there is something to the lived experience, the a posteriori knowledge, as the philosophers would call it, which does hold a certain value, and that's why I do believe in Shilajit, because I've taken it. Now, the question is, if you take someone who's got lower testosterone than he should have and he takes Shilajit, will he get an increase? Potentially. But will someone who already has the optimum testosterone levels genetically that they would have had anyway, if they take Shilajit, will they see an increase? Who knows? But then find me that person. Find me that person. I mean, walk in the street and find me the person who does every micro optimization they can and need to make their testosterone at their testosterone level, I should say, at their genetic peak. The peak at which their genetic allows them based on nutritional and other lifestyle factors. So, that seems more doubtful. That Shilajit would then increase their testosterone beyond their genetic peak, which I suppose would imply there's some kind of nutritional deficit, which Shilajit helps to counteract. Is this true? I don't know. All I know is that I've taken it before, and shit, it can make you horny. It's crazy. It is crazy, and you just need one of those little. I did exactly what they said. Get a teaspoon and get about a pea-sized amount, dissolve in water. It takes a while to mix. I mean, it might take 15 minutes to sort of dissolve into it, and it tastes not nice. At least the first time I tried it. Some people, they've tried it the first time and they haven't really. When I've introduced it to them, they haven't really noticed the taste that much. When I first tried it, I was gagging. Within a few times, it was. I could do it. It wasn't too bad. But yeah, it just goes to show about these fitness influencers. I mean, influencers. There's so many. There's so much confusion. Who are you meant to turn to? And in situations like this, people, posit there should be maybe a body over which says this is true, this is not true, but then that body is corruptible. And this is why I'm a conspiracy theorist, because everything is, all human institutions are corruptible at some level. And people think the bigger it gets, the harder that becomes. I don't know if that's true. I mean, it seems to me like the more people you have in an organization, the more likely that one of those people is going to be corrupt. Just averages and percentages, you know. Um, do I think the Earth is flat? No, I've said that. I've said I don't think the Earth is flat. That seems too big for me, and it flies in the face of. Well, I've never seen a map of the flat Earth which seems to make sense in terms of what we know about how we can travel. You can get a plane from A to B without deliberately turning. And this is a big one because I've seen one, the most reputable flat Earth map is probably the one with the North Pole in the center and all the continents span out around it. But if you wanted to go from point A to point B on that, you would have to sort of, I suppose, take a right, you know? If you're going from direction A to direction B, you'll take a left or whatever. But in reality, you can just go straight. But then I don't even know if that's true. I mean, maybe you can just go straight. I don't know. It seems weird to me. Um, I mean, I'm the same spiritually with the empiricism. There's a certain level of rationalism that you could try and apply to spiritual life or religious arguments like the Kalam cosmological argument or Anselm or all these various theologians and philosophers. And to me, I think the experience of the divine is more important than any rationalizations that you can give for its existence. I think necessarily speaking, a non-physical entity is impossible to measure with physical means. God being a non-physical entity will be impossible to measure with physical means, which means that you need logical and rational arguments to support or deny the claim that God exists. I think it's better if you've just had some experience with the divine. Some people find this on psychedelics. Other people look to manifestation and synchronicities, as Carl Jung talked about. Synchronicities are definitely a weird one. I mean, I used to have a document on my PC called synchronicities.txt, and it listed synchronicities I'd come across in my day-to-day life, and some of them were rather bizarre, rather unlikely to occur, not impossible. But what are synchronicities? They're coincidences, but they're coincidences which seem meaningful. I'm not going to say they are meaningful, but they seem meaningful. I mean, the one that Carl Jung talks about is a woman coming to him in this clinic, and she talks about this dream of a scarab, and then at the window there's a scarabaeid beetle knocking on the window. What do you say about that? I mean, scarabs are very sort of Egyptian archetypal, but I mean in Western culture they're not that big, and a scarabaeid isn't the same thing as a scarab, but it is the closest you can find. And this woman was dreaming of a scarab, and the scarab knocks on the window. Now, why synchronicities? I mean, the question is, why? What purpose do they serve? It seems to me that sometimes the purpose they serve is just to highlight the fact that they do exist, and that reality is not what we make it. Reality is mental in some way. Reality, and I don't mean crazy, although that's also true. I mean, reality is built by mind, or by consciousness, by experience. And this explains synchronicities and it explains manifestation, because the whole idea is that the world shapes itself to human or other, but based on not psychology, because psychology kind of, I suppose, implies a physical thing as well. I talked about it in a previous segment, probably a few hours ago now, um, about this. It's I don't know. I don't know. I think reality is mental. I think reality is mental. I think manifestation is definitely true because I've experienced it. Synchronicities are definitely true because I've experienced them. What more do you need to say? I'll tell you what else I've experienced. I've experienced the delight and the terror of Russell Brand. Oh God. Now I always didn't like Russell Brand as growing up. He seemed like a cunt. Wildly speaking, annoying voice, says big words just for the sake of saying big words and really to sound smart. But then I started to get into him when I saw the judge. What is it, Judge Janine? Judge Justice Janine? Fucking hell, Judge Janine! When she's talking about bombing Iraqi civilians or something. That was a funny video, and sort of slightly changed my mind on him. Then I saw some of his political content, his sort of, I wouldn't call it journalism, more like reporting. I saw some of his reporting of alternative journalism, and he seemed quite good. And then I see he's got he's got Saturn on his shirt. Now, anyone who's not sure why that's important, there's a theory, there's a subreddit actually called the Saturn Storm Cube, r slash Saturn Storm Cube, I believe. And the belief is that the elite, the New World Order, there's a whole geometric language of spirituality that they use revolving around sixes and cubes. And if you take a hexagon and you join three of the sides to the center, you'll get a sort of 3D looking 2D render of a cube. In a similar way to if you use the flower of life, you can create 2D representations of the platonic solids. Now Saturn's important because Saturn has the hexagon on top, and no one knows how to explain that. I'll tell you what, the Terence Howard thing was quite interesting when he used equations or physics or something to create Saturn without using gravity, and it created the hexagon on top, and no one knows how to explain the hexagon. But the theory goes that the hexagon and Saturn himself, the actual idea of Saturn as a deity, who may or may not also be like, the demiurge, but is definitely syncretized with Cronus of the Greeks. That's known, but also El from the Babylonians, and Enlil from the Sumerians, and a bunch of other ones who I cannot remember right now. But I mean, so basically, he's the big bad. He is the big bad, and even some of his practices go into early Yahwism, Yahweh worship. That and his son Baal or Zeus, both of their different attributes, well, at least some of them, went into creating Yahweh, or at least adding to the myth, the story of Yahweh. But people believe that Saturn is the big bad in this subreddit, at least. That Saturn is the big bad. And it's not to say that Russell Brand believes that, but it's weird because you'd think he'd know that. You think he would know that his followers did believe that, and therefore would not do things to further encourage such discussion. But it is a fairly obscure community, I would say. So, I mean, it doesn't prove anything. Then a few days later, I see him wearing a shirt with a 33 on it. And I don't think I need to explain what that means, but just in case, that's a reference to 33rd degree Freemasonry. It's also a reference to 3 as a kind of divine number, like Tesla said, and like all these other people said. So, Russell Brand may or may not be a Satanist. But it's odd because sometimes you think maybe Alex Jones is working for the elite. Who knows? But then you look at these people and who has brought out more, who has created more anti-establishment people, individuals. If they are a plant, it seems like on some level they've backfired because they've actually made people more awake. But that doesn't mean they're correct about everything or that they're telling the truth about everything. And that's important to bear in mind. Well, we're coming up to the break now. I want people to let me know who they think should play Gordon Freeman in a movie. As I said, I've been playing Half-Life on my tablet. Got me thinking, why has there not been a Half-Life movie? The reason is because Valve is a bunch of stingy cunts. But it would be a good movie. Now, so let me know who you think should play Gordon Freeman and a couple other figures. Kleiner, Eli, Breen, G-Man. We want Half-Life 1, realistically. Barney. Half-Life 1, realistically. I don't really care that much about Half-Life 2. No, I like the game. But the sequel has to come after the first one, obviously. So let's just sort out the first one first. What have we got up now? We have... Let me just say, if you don't like George Michael, you're fucking gay.